preseason games leave a lot to be desired, and the Lions coming to town on Saturday night. We're monitoring the Orioles into New York all weekend long and trying to get back into first place, and I'm sure the Blue Jays will have something to say about that next week here at Camden Yards. We are going out to Detroit right now to talk some Lions football as they come in for the always important third preseason game. This guy is the Lions radio play-by-play voice now for a dozen years. He's also the sports director at Fox 2 in Detroit and Motown. We welcome Dan Miller back onto the program. You can follow his journey out at Dan Miller Fox 2 on Twitter, and he'll be coming in not for the tourist crab cakes, we hope, on Saturday night. Hey, Dan, welcome in. Happy almost end of preseason to you. These things can't get over soon enough from a fan's perspective, that's for sure.
Yeah, we're getting there. It's a tough time of year because you're trying to answer questions and you're really not getting the information that you need to answer those questions. So that, second week in September, I think we'll all know a lot more about these teams. But, look, there is something to be gained by playing these games, and it gives you an opportunity to see young guys. And at the end of the day, the real purpose is trying to get from 90 to 53 and make sure you keep the right 53.
Well, and keep the 53 that you really want upright, right? And I know there was some issue a couple weeks ago, Stafford taking a pop from Harrison. The last thing in the world that we want to see on Saturday night is Ziggy closing in on number 5 at some point with a free shot, 8.5 minutes into the first quarter of a preseason game on a guy who's had an ACL issue. I think that's every franchise's worst nightmare.
Yeah, I mean, the Lions had a mock game at Ford Field a couple of weeks ago, just a chance to give the young guys a chance to see the home field, and they opened up the doors and let the crowds come in, and Eric Ebron went down, just kind of a nothing play. He was kind of rolling to his right, just kind of got caught up in the pile and went down and grabbed the back of his leg, and everybody thinks, oh my gosh, it's an Achilles, and it's just left you sick. I mean, you just saw that, and he's a guy that they're counting on to really come along this year. So to your point, yeah, you're trying to stay healthy. Luckily, it was not an Achilles. It just appeared to be an ankle, and he's back doing some things now. So you just want to get out of this thing in one piece. You want to get out of this thing with maximum improvement, but you also want to get out with maximum health and get to that first week as best you can.
He is Dan Miller, Fox 2 out on Twitter. All right, let's go through this because I guess it starts with there's a lot of purple going on out there, right? I mean, Caldwell brings his Super Bowl ring, and then, then on the defensive side of the ball, you really have a scheme in Terrell Austin that's really brought a lot of things from Baltimore. And then you got Nada, you got Bolden on the other side. This is a little bit of a homecoming for a lot of guys on Saturday night.
Yeah, and we had a head of O last year, so, they have brought in players. Josh Fines, I think, is another one. They brought in players that they're comfortable with, and they know some of these guys from being with them previously. And, that's not unusual, as you know, Nestor, in this coaching business. You go with guys that make you comfortable, and Nada, to his credit, I mean, I know you guys saw the best he ever had, but he was so good by the time last year ended, and I really felt for him last year because he missed all the preseason with an injury. Came back, played week 1 in San Diego. It was about 105 on the field. It was ridiculous. So I'm sure he was completely gassed. And he never even looked like himself till about week 8. And then from then on, he just took off. So the hope is he's going to pick up there this year. And it's important to this team that he does because that's the strength of this team is right in the middle of that defensive line. And if it doesn't turn out to be the strength, they got problems because they have to be good up front defensively if that thing's going to work.
Yeah, you talk so much about that side of the ball. Really, the problem for the Lions was the O-line, and probably this is, on Saturday night, the thing fans are going to be focused the most on is, are they moving the football? Are they protecting Stafford? Are they getting some first downs? All of that's really going to begin in the trenches for them. And, hey, the Ravens would like to think when they put their first squad out there on the front 7 of defense, that's going to be a little collision on Saturday night that these teams will be judged on until they get out on the regular field. And I know you guys open the season in Indy. We open here against Rex and the Bills.
Biggest question this team has is the offensive line. There's no doubt. And they were last in the league in rushing last year. For his career, Matthew Stafford has never had a running game where he could turn around, hand it to somebody, and get consistent positive results. And, everybody talks about improving the offensive line, protecting Stafford, and that's important, but they've got to run the ball. I mean, I understand this has become a passing league, but there's still something to be said for running it. If you go back and look last year, one team outside the top 20 in the NFL in rushing made the playoffs, and that was New England. And they're a little bit different because the guy they have a quarterback. And, it's been a work in progress. They have put a lot of resources into it in terms of draft picks. It's a young offensive line. It hasn't been particularly good so far. They're hoping they can take another step this week. But, my gut is that by the time they hit the field in Indianapolis for week 1, it's still going to be a work in progress. But the hope has to be that it's further along and certainly functional, at least to the point where you can run a little bit and protect Matthew.
All right, so, for Stafford, and number 1 overall pick, and I've said this week, Ryan Goff's going to have to live with this. Certainly it follows guys around, but when you don't win playoff games at this juncture, and Matt Ryan's probably going through the same thing in Atlanta. Flacco goes through it, every year, even though he's got a ring. And I guess, the Andy Daltons of the world have to go through it, even if they weren't number 1 overall picks. But I think the measurement is higher on a guy like Stafford, and I've seen how much this thing's turned around. Jimmy Schwartz was a great buddy of mine, obviously being a Baltimore guy. I looked at the roster this week. I'm like, wow, Schwartz would even recognize most of these guys, but Stafford is that holdover guy, and when you don't win, it starts to stick to him.
It's the one thing that's left. I mean, he's got the other stuff on his resume. I mean, he's hit certain benchmarks before anybody in history and gotten the yards and the passes and things like that, but the touchdown passes. But, bottom line is you got to win in January. And, he's gotten there a couple times. They haven't won left. And obviously that's not all on him, but at the end of the day, that's where a quarterback is judged. That's what people want to see. They're going to look and see, did you win, ultimately a Super Bowl, but did you win playoff games? Were you a true contender? And that's what they haven't done yet. And again, it's not all on him, but he's the guy that wears it more than anybody else. So, he's moving through his career. I still think he's got plenty left. I still think he can get better. I still think he's ascending. I don't think he's necessarily a player who's getting worse, but I think it's also a function of the players around him and the system around him. And back to what we talked about a moment ago, a running game around him. So, there's a lot of factors that go into it, but there's no question that that's the monkey on his back is not winning playoff games, not getting there enough. And that's why they had major front office turnover. That's why they have a new general manager. That's why there's been so many changes in this organization, because they haven't been good enough. And they're hoping that they're headed in the right direction now. And if, in fact, they do, he'll be viewed a lot differently.
Well, you've been there a long time, and when you talk about an organization that was very patient, let's say, during the Millen era, right, but has won like one playoff game in my lifetime, and this new turnover and what we saw last year, some thoughts on that from the matriarch of the family, no less, who sat in that skybox first at the Silver Dome and now downtown and watched the team year after year sort of disappoint people in a place where the Red Wings have won, the Tigers have been pretty good, but the Lions would rule the kingdom there if they could ever consistently win double digits.
Well, it's the power of the NFL. I mean, the NFL is just a little bit different than other sports, and it pulls people in. You play once a week, every game's an event, and you got 7 days leading up to that game, and in those 7 days, heck, even when you're 1-12 or 0-12, you can figure out a way that your team might be able to win. But, Mrs. Ford did sit there and watch, but she was sitting there and watching the team and then watching her husband run the team. And when Mr. Ford passed, the assumption from a lot of people was that his son was going to take over. Well, he didn't. And his wife, Martha Ford, just stepped right in. And
she loves it, right? I mean, she loves it, right? She loves being involved in this.
And she is absolutely engaged. And you hit it on the head. When he ran this team, he was patient to a fault and loyal to a fault. And he let people that did not show the promise that they were going to turn this thing around continue to run the organization. She jumped in last year, didn't like what she saw, and boom, an offensive coordinator was gone. And then boom, your president was gone and your general manager gone. And they were midway through the season. And then she, brought in a new president. They brought in a new general manager, gave him the choice whether or not to keep Jim Caldwell. And I think she has shown that she's not going to be as patient as her husband, and she is going to, hold people accountable to do things the right way and to ultimately show results in what they're doing.
I tell you what, we got a little baseball thing going on around here, and I know Detroit might be involved in that. And you're not just a Lions guy; you're also the sports director at Fox 2. They're covering just about everything. Tigers trying to give it a run, and here come the Royals as well. The Orioles have company right now, and the Orioles aren't playing well.
Yeah, it's gotten really, it's gotten crowded, and it's like even the other night you're sitting there and watching it, and the Tigers were off, and you're looking up and you're saying, okay, Baltimore won, Houston won. Cleveland won, Seattle, and it's like, good grief, you're not gaining any ground, and then you realize it's become a lot more difficult because there's a lot more teams contending. And I think right now you can draw a parallel between Baltimore and Detroit a little bit in that they're both wondering if they're going to have enough pitching to find some sort of sustained run and get this thing done. I mean, right now the Tigers have two starting pitchers that they feel like they can trot out there, and one of them has never been this deep into a major league season. Michael Fulmer's been unbelievable. But, this is uncharted ground for him. Justin Verlander has been great, terrific. But, they got two guys, and then they're just hoping they can get good starts out of the rest of them. And that's a tough way to live right now. And beyond that, the bullpen has really hurt them. So, look, 2-3 weeks ago, they got on a hot streak, and they jumped back into it, and everybody got excited. And then all of a sudden, you feel like they got things turned around, and then they started getting roughed up a little bit again. And I'm not sure what this team is. I think they're capable of getting on a hot streak again. I think if you were to try to put odds on it, I say the odds are probably against it just because they have so many holes right now. But, if they can find a third or fourth pitcher that can give them a good stretch run, they're right there. But, you alluded to it. There's a whole lot of teams in this mix right now making it interesting.
Well, certainly the Orioles are keeping it interesting, and all of these teams being involved. I mean, the Royals were dead and buried, right? I mean, At various points it felt like the Mariners were buried. At various points it felt like Houston was in it. Then they're out of it. Now they're back in it again after a kind of a wild weekend out here. We are going to have 7 or 8 cities involved in this thing. Meanwhile, the National League, they're all just kind of going to sleep over there waiting for the Cubs to show up, right?
Yeah, I mean, I've watched them closely this year, and they're really good. And there's finding consistency in the rest of that league is tough. And I mean, you got a decent wild card race there with Houston hanging on to that, St. Louis hanging on to that second spot. But I think the American League is going to be fascinating watching this thing come down the stretch because there's so many moving parts. And as I alluded to a moment ago, good luck scoreboard watching because you're going to have a whole lot of scores to watch. And considering the what you have going on in the East. And then whoever's not in first place sitting there in the top spot in the wild card, I mean, it's going to be really something. And to see, the heart of a champion, as you alluded to in Kansas City, and some of that came against Detroit, get back in this thing, and the Yankees sell everybody, and all of a sudden they're hanging on the fringes of it, and Seattle's hanging in there. So it's going to be fun. I mean, look, that's why they did this, and that's why I think people have kind of embraced it because it's given everybody great theater as you come down the last 5-6 weeks of the season.
Hey, we wind up in Detroit, and I get to ride the carousel again. I'm happy with that. Whatever works.
We welcome you anytime.
Dan, we'll see you here in Baltimore on Saturday night for some more fake football. We're almost to the end of this mess.
Always enjoy that trip. Thanks, Nestor. I appreciate it.
You got it. Dan Miller, Fox 2, the way to find him out on Twitter, as well as at fox2.com. And he is doing the Lions play-by-play. He's been the play-by-play voice there for 12 years now. So he'll be calling the action here in Baltimore on Saturday night as well. We are calling all sorts of action between now and the weekend for the fake football with the Lions. Luke and I will be out on the fields. And, of course, you hear much of the press conference material here at WNST.net. You can catch all of it out in the Bahia Toyota audio of all 24 hours a day for anything that you miss from the Orioles, from the Ravens, from here on our radio programming, as well as all the stuff we do now on Facebook Live and streaming, as well as our YouTube WNSTV live stream as well. You can always email me, nasty@WNST.net, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, complete full service out on the social media place, as well as our morning newspaper, which comes your way at 7 a.m. and is powered up by Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com. All the news, the headlines, the box scores, all coming at you on the morning newspaper. Last but not least, and I know we'll be sending some text out this week, the WNST text service brings you breaking news. I know the Ravens will be making some cuts. The Orioles probably will have a little shuttling going on before the 40-man breaks open next week, and they stay in this pennant race when they head to New York this weekend. All of it brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. Be the smartest person in your sports circle to know the news first. It's what we do. We've done it for almost 10 years now, 10,000 of you on the WNST text service. And Dennis is here on Thursday driving you home from 3 until 5 and getting you ready for the weekend as well. I'm going to be in Germany next week meeting the man who has saved my wife's life twice on the bone marrow registry. We'll be telling you more about that as the weekend gets going. And as we get on our plane to Germany next week, we'll have great programming here. I have plenty of good stuff for you on the radio side of things as well as the website as we enter the Labor Day weekend next week. I'm Nestor. We are WNST.net, AM 1570 and WNST Towson, Baltimore. And we never stop talking Baltimore sports.